The first time Aiden saw her, the evening sky was dimming into a soft lavender hue, casting a gentle glow over the seaside town of Clearwater Bay. The ocean's waves brushed against the weathered wooden pier with a rhythmic hush, like an ancient lullaby whispered through the salt-kissed air. Aiden had come to this quiet corner of the world to escape the relentless noise, the cacophony of city streets, the buzz of endless conversations, the heavy echoes of memories that clung to him like invisible chains around his chest. He carried grief like a shadow, one that had followed him since his mother's passing a year earlier. Work had become his refuge, but it only deepened the exhaustion. Here in Clearwater Bay, he sought silence, solitude, a place where the world might finally let him breathe without reminding him of what he'd lost. Fate, however, has a way of ignoring our carefully laid plans, introducing chaos in the form of unexpected encounters. She stood at the far end of the pier, her bare feet planted firmly on the splintered planks, her white cotton dress billowing in the breeze like a flag of quiet surrender. Her long dark hair danced freely behind her, catching the fading light and making her seem more a part of the sea than the land. Her hands rested lightly on the railing, fingers tracing the rough wood as if seeking comfort in its familiarity. Her gaze was fixed on the horizon where the sun dipped low, painting the water in shades of amber and rose. She appeared lost in thought, waiting for something the ocean had promised her long ago, a secret tide, perhaps, or a forgotten dream washing ashore. She didn't notice him at first, or if she did, she gave no sign. But when she turned slowly, gracefully, her eyes met his, and in that instant, Aiden forgot the very reasons he'd come here to escape. It hit him like a quiet thunder, a subtle tremor deep within his soul, a recognition of something unfinished, something that had been waiting in the wings of his life, patient and unspoken. His heart stuttered, not with fear, but with an unfamiliar warmth. Beautiful evening, she said, her voice light and airy, carrying the subtle melody of someone who could calm even the fiercest storms with a whisper. Yes, he replied, though his eyes were no longer on the sky or the sea. They were on her, tracing the soft curve of her smile, the way her lashes framed eyes that held depths he couldn't yet fathom. She smiled gently, almost knowingly, as if she could read the thoughts swirling in his mind but was too gracious to acknowledge them aloud. She turned back to the horizon, her posture relaxed yet poised, inviting without demanding. Aiden hesitated for a moment, then walked toward her, the pier creaking under his steps like an old friend groaning in welcome. He stopped beside her, close enough to feel the faint warmth of her presence, but not so close as to intrude. The wood beneath them seemed to hold the weight of two strangers teetering on the edge of something profound, something that could rewrite the scripts of their lives without a single word exchanged. They stood there, in companionable silence, breathing in sync with the ocean's ebb and flow. The sky shifted gradually from lavender to a deep navy, stars beginning to peek through like long-held secrets, finally allowed to shine. The air grew cooler, carrying the faint scent of seaweed and distant bonfires from the beach below. I'm Elena, she said suddenly, her fingers brushing the railing as if drawing strength from it. Her voice broke the quiet like a soft ripple on still water. Aiden, he responded, his name feeling strangely new on his tongue in this moment. It's nice to meet you. Aiden, her tone was calm, but beneath it lay a softness, a vulnerability that suggested this wasn't mere politeness. It was an offering, a tentative bridge extended across the chasm of their separate worlds, a quiet invitation to a beginning neither had anticipated. He didn't know then that this simple exchange would become the cornerstone of the most unforgettable chapter in his life. He couldn't have guessed that Elena had arrived at the pier that evening burdened by her own heavy thoughts, seeking solace in the vastness of the sea because the world had grown too confining. She had been yearning for connection, for someone who spoke the subtle language of quiet hearts, someone who wouldn't demand explanations but would simply be there. Aiden felt it intuitively, the way the wind seemed to curve toward her, the way her presence filled the empty spaces around him. Her eyes lingered on his just a second longer than necessary, and in that extra beat, he sensed she wasn't a passing mirage but a pivotal turn in his story. Aiden had come to Clearwater Bay to heal from the wounds that time alone couldn't mend. Elena had come to remind herself why she should keep moving forward, why the ache in her chest didn't have to define her forever. Neither had expected to discover the missing piece of their narrative standing on an old, salt-worn pier under a twilight sky. The next day, Aiden convinced himself he wouldn't see her again. He wasn't the type to pursue fleeting encounters. Life had taught him that forcing things often led to more pain. She had felt like a dream, ethereal, transient. He feared reaching for her might make her vanish like morning mist. But destiny, with its unpredictable whims, had other intentions. As the sun rose, casting golden rays across the rippling water, he wandered down to the beach, unable to shake the restlessness that had kept him awake through the night. There she was, sitting on the soft sand, her knees drawn up to her chest, a slender stick in her hand as she idly drew patterns in the grain swirls and lines that mimicked the waves. The early light haloed her hair, making her look like a figure from a painting, serene yet introspective. Asterisk, you're early, Elena said without turning, as if she'd sensed his approach long before his footsteps crunched on the shells scattered along the shore. Asterisk, I couldn't sleep, he admitted, his voice carrying a hint of surprise at her intuition. Asterisk, me neither. She glanced over her shoulder, her eyes meeting his with a warmth that eased the knot in his chest. Asterisk, this time, he didn't hesitate. He lowered himself onto the sand beside her, close enough that their shoulders nearly brushed. She didn't pull away, didn't shift uncomfortably. Instead, she seemed to relax further, as if his presence was a balm she'd been waiting for. Asterisk, you come to the pier often? He asked, his gaze following hers to the horizon where the sea met the sky in a seamless blend. Asterisk, yes, it's the quietest place in town. The world makes more sense there, or at least, it feels less overwhelming. She paused, her stick pausing midline in the sand. The constant motion of the waves. It reminds me that everything passes. Eventually, asterisk, does it? He probed gently, sensing there was more beneath her words. Asterisk, maybe not the world. She conceded with a small rueful smile. But I make more sense there, away from the noise, the expectations. It's like the sea listens without judging. Her voice cracked just the tiniest bit on the last word, a subtle fracture that revealed depths of emotion she usually kept hidden. Asterisk, Aiden didn't press for details. He understood the fragility of such moments. Pushing too hard could shatter them. Instead, he reached down and picked up a small, iridescent seashell from the sand beside him, a simple thing, polished by the tides, with ridges that caught the light. He held it out to her without a word. Asterisk, she took it, her fingers brushing as lightly, and her eyes softened in a way that etched itself into his memory. Thank you, Elena whispered, turning the shell over in her palm as if it were a precious gem. In that gesture, it felt like more than a shell. It was an acknowledgement, a silent assurance that she wasn't alone in her quiet struggles. Asterisk, from that morning onward, their paths intertwined with an effortless inevitability. They kept finding each other at the pier as dusk fell, beneath the ancient cypress trees that lined the coastal paths, wandering the sleepy streets of Clearwater Bay where time seemed to slow. Sometimes they filled the air with conversation, sharing fragments of their lives like puzzle pieces. Other times, they embraced the silence, letting the sounds of the sea and wind speak for them. Presence became their shared language, a comforting rhythm that needed no translation. Asterisk, as the days stretched into weeks, Aiden began to uncover the delicate layers of Elena's world, truths she offered him with care, as if they were fragile artifacts from a hidden museum. She loved the sound of rain pattering on rooftops, how it drowned out the chaos of thoughts. She confessed a deep-seated fear of the ocean's depths, yet she was drawn to its surface, staring at it for hours as if seeking answers in its endless blue. She always carried a worn leather notebook in her bag, filled with scribbles and verses, but she rarely let anyone glimpse its pages until him. She believed in signs from the universe, a stray feather on the path, a song playing at just the right moment, an unexpected sunset that painted the sky in hues of hope. Asterisk, each revelation pulled Aiden deeper, not out of mere curiosity, but because understanding her felt like a lifelong quest, one that filled the voids he'd long ignored. He found himself anticipating their meetings, his days brighter for the promise of her company. In turn, Elena pieced together Aiden's story, listening with a patience that made him feel seen for the first time in years. He told her about losing his mother to a sudden illness, how the grief had hollowed him out, leaving him to drown in endless work to avoid the emptiness. He'd forgotten what it felt like to feel light, to laugh without the weight of sorrow pulling at the edges. But with her, his smiles came easier, more genuine, crinkling the corners of his eyes in a way that surprised even him. Asterisk, the more they shared, the more they mended each other's frayed edges, often without realizing the healing was happening. Laughter returned to Aiden's voice. Elena's steps grew lighter, her gaze less haunted. Asterisk, but true love rarely unfolds without a pivotal moment, a spark that ignites the embers into a lasting flame. Asterisk, one evening, as the moon hung low in the sky like a silver lantern, casting shimmering reflections on the water, they sat on the pier's edge, feet dangling above the gentle waves. The air was cool, laced with the scent of blooming night jasmine from the nearby dunes. Elena turned to him, her expression thoughtful. Aiden, do you believe people meet for a reason, that there's some greater purpose behind these chance encounters? Asterisk, he looked at her, really looked, taking in the way the moonlight softened her features, the vulnerability in her eyes that mirrored his own. Yes, he said after a pause, his voice steady despite the racing of his heart. I do. Asterisk, what do you think our reason is? She asked, her fingers twisting nervously in her lap. Asterisk, he exhaled slowly, weighing his words, afraid that too much honesty might shatter the delicate balance they'd found. But the truth demanded to be spoken, to give each other back something we lost, pieces of ourselves that the world took away. Asterisk, she swallowed hard, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. And what did I give you back? Asterisk, life, he whispered, the word hanging between them like a vow. You reminded me what it feels like to be alive, not just existing. Asterisk, a single tear traced down her cheek, catching the moonlight. She didn't wipe it away. And you gave me hope, she replied, her voice trembling. Hope that I don't have to face everything alone. Asterisk that night, for the first time, Elena opened her notebook to him under the glow of a small flashlight. Her handwriting was elegant yet hesitant, looping letters that spoke of a gentle soul. The pages were filled with poems, verses about longing for peace, for understanding, for a connection that didn't fade with the dawn. Words poured out like confessions, metaphors of stormy seas and quiet harbors, of hearts mending in the shadows. Asterisk, you've never shown this to anyone? Aiden asked softly, his fingers tracing the edges of the page with reverence. Asterisk, no, only you. She met his gaze, her vulnerability laid bare. Asterisk, why me? He pressed gently, needing to understand. Asterisk, because you look at me like I'm not broken, like I'm whole, even with my scars. Asterisk, you're not broken, he said firmly, his hand covering hers. You're resilient, beautiful in ways words can't capture. His conviction made her breath hitch, a spark of belief igniting in her eyes. Asterisk, something irreversible shifted that night. The air between them thickened with unspoken promises. Their hands touched lightly at first, a tentative brush of fingertips, then fully intertwining, fingers lacing together as if they'd always been meant to fit that way. No words were needed. The silence was rich with confessions, with a quiet acceptance of budding love. Asterisk, but love, in its raw form, is rarely a straight, unmarred path. It twists and tests, revealing truths that challenge the heart. Asterisk, 2 days later, Elena vanished without a trace. Her small cottage on the edge of town was locked, shutters drawn tight. Her notebook, usually tucked in her bag, was nowhere to be found. Aiden's world tilted. Her absence carved a sharp wound in his chest, unexpected and raw. He searched frantically the pier, the beach, the winding paths under the sun. He knocked on neighbors' doors, describing her with a desperation that surprised even him. Have you seen Elena? Long hair, white dress, always at the pier. Asterisk, nothing. Whispers of her being reclusive, but no leads. A whole week dragged by, each day heavier than the last. The once soothing quiet of Clearwater Bay now suffocated him. Every corner echoing with memories, her laughter like wind chimes, her soft voice weaving stories, her eyes searching the horizon as if it held all answers. Sleep evaded him. Food lost its taste. The grief he'd come to escape resurfaced, intertwined with this new ache. Asterisk, on the 8th day, hope flickering like a dying ember, he returned to the pier at dusk. There she was, sitting cross-legged on the planks, her face pale and drawn, eyes swollen from unspoken sorrow. Her breath came in uneven hitches, as if she'd been holding back a storm. Asterisk, Elena, he called, rushing toward her, his heart pounding with a mix of relief and concern. Asterisk, she flinched slightly at the sound, but then her expression softened as recognition dawned. Aiden, I'm so sorry. Asterisk, what happened? I looked for you everywhere. I don't know what I thought. His voice cracked, betraying the fear he'd carried. Asterisk, she looked down, twisting her hands in her lap. My father was hospitalized suddenly in the city. A heart episode. I had to leave right away. There was no time to explain or say goodbye. I didn't know how long I'd be gone or if I'd even come back. I didn't want to burden you with worry. Asterisk, I worried anyway, he said quietly, sitting beside her, close enough to offer comfort without overwhelming. Asterisk, she met his eyes then, and something deep within her seemed to fracture open, releasing a torrent of emotion. I'm scared, Aiden, terrified. Really? Asterisk, of what? He asked, his hand reaching for hers instinctively. Asterisk, of feeling this much, this soon, of letting someone in, only to lose them, of being vulnerable and then watching it all crumble. Her words tumbled out, laced with pain. Asterisk, he cupped her face gently, his thumb brushing away a stray tear. Elena, I'm here, right here. I'm not going anywhere. Asterisk, but you don't know everything about me, she whispered shakily, her voice barely audible over the waves. The parts that are messy, the fears that keep me up at night. Asterisk, then tell me, he urged softly. Share it all. I'm not running. Asterisk, she hesitated, drawing a deep breath as tears gathered anew. My mother left when I was 12. Just gone one day, no explanation, no goodbye. It shattered my father, he became a shell of himself. And it broke me too. Ever since I've carried this fear that anyone I let close will abandon me. So, to protect myself, I leave first. I push away before the pain can hit. Asterisk, her voice broke on the last words, raw and aching. Aiden pulled her into his arms, holding her tightly as she sobbed into his chest. He didn't offer platitudes. He simply held her, letting her grief flow until it ebbed. Asterisk, that night, they remained on the pier until the first hints of dawn gilded the sky. They talked for hours about fears that haunted them, dreams they'd buried, wounds that still stung, and wishes they dared to voice. Vulnerabilities spilled out like stars falling from the heavens, illuminating the darkness between them. Asterisk, as the light grew, Aiden whispered, stay with me. Let's face this together. Asterisk, she nodded, her eyes clear despite the exhaustion. I want to. Asterisk, from that point, their bond deepened into something fierce yet tender, like a flame wrapped in the softest silk. Days blurred into weeks of shared moments, strolling through the bustling morning markets, hands intertwined as they sampled fresh fruits and laughed at vendors' stories, stealing quiet kisses behind the gnarled cypress trees where the world faded to just the two of them, dancing barefoot on the moonlit beach, the sand cool underfoot, no music but the waves and their synchronized heartbeats. Elena's poems evolved, shifting from themes of longing to ones of hope and renewal. Aiden found himself laughing freely, the weight on his shoulders lifting with each shared smile. They healed in tandem, growing stronger in each other's light. Love bloomed gently at first, then with intensity, and finally with fearless abandon. Then, one fateful evening, as the moon hovered like a silent witness over the shimmering sea, Aiden led her back to the pier where it all began. The air was alive with the symphony of crickets and distant waves, the sky a canvas of twinkling stars. Elena. He began, his voice trembling despite his resolve. He took her hands in his, feeling the steady pulse that matched his own. She looked at him, her eyes glowing with unwavering trust. Yes, you've changed my world in ways I never imagined. You made me feel alive again, taught me that love isn't about perfection but about showing up, even when it's hard. I can't picture a life without you in it. Her breath caught, a soft smile curving her lips as she touched his cheek. And I can't imagine mine without you. You've been my anchor, my light. Aiden reached into his pocket, pulling out a simple silver bracelet adorned with a tiny moon charm, a symbol of the nights they'd shared under its glow. I don't need grand gestures or promises etched in stone, he said softly. I just need you to stay, fully, without fear, to choose us every day. She stared at the bracelet, her lips trembling as tears of joy welled up. Aiden, it's beautiful. Will you choose us? He whispered, his heart laid bare. Yes, she breathed, her voice filled with overwhelming clarity. 1,000 times yes. He fastened the bracelet around her wrist, his fingers shaking with emotion. Elena threw her arms around him, burying her face in his chest as sobs of relief mingled with laughter. The sea crashed rhythmically beneath them, the moon shone approvingly above, and for a moment, the universe felt perfectly aligned, as if it had been holding its breath for this very instant. From that day forward, Elena no longer feared the fragility of love. The man she'd met on a lonely pier didn't save her. He simply extended his heart, reminding her that hers was still capable of beating strongly. And Aiden no longer shied away from life's uncertainties. The woman who sketched poems in the sand, that didn't fix him. She showed him that even broken souls can love profoundly and be loved in return. Their story wasn't flawless, no true love story ever is. There were still moments of doubt, arguments born from old wounds, days when the world intruded with its demands. But it was real, fierce, and unequivocally theirs. And in the end, that authenticity was enough to rewrite the narratives of two lives, turning solitude into shared serenity, grief into gratitude, and chance into cherished destiny.